They were just not streaming.
They missed a good 10-minute. You should have said those were the best 10 minutes of my life. I can't believe
Yeah.
you missed it.
It would have been great if it was like a brushing break or something. Nobody wants to do that anyway. Oh, this year with all the blood, did you guys watch the girls and they were just like bleeding and we kept having to stop because they were bleeding and it was like a whole
Oh my
thing.
God.
It was rough.
Ugh.
They're getting rid of that rule. So you don't have to wait for the blood anymore. That like the way the IFSC does it as well, it's like you just have to stop it and keep going, but you don't get to pause your time.
Oh,
Which is
geez.
rough. That's happened to me in a competition and it's rough.
You
Like
can't just like tape it up and
you can. I got pulled over to the side and he like grabbed my finger and retaped it like all the way and I was like, I can't even hold on to anything now. So that's
yeah,
cool. But yeah, we do like a
just put some
time.
chalk in it.
Yeah, we stop the time in USA climbing comps, but they're gonna switch that because it can just be disastrous.
Really?
Yeah.
We are live on Facebook. I will get
Oh,
us on Instagram. Hey, all who are just turning in, this is Brad. I'm sorry we've had some tech difficulties. The tech gods have all been put off by the rain or something. But we'll be going live here on Instagram in a second. I'm going to leave it to Meagan and to Mollie, and
oh,
I'll see you guys later.
All right.
awesome.
Okay, so hello everyone. I am very excited to be tonight's guest host for the Boulder Sessions interviews. If you don't know who I am, my name is Mollie Stolbov and I've been a member at Boulders Climbing Gym for about 8 years or so. And I was also the co-chair for the Madison Women Climbers group for 3 years before passing that torch on. And currently, besides my day job, I'm also the co-founder and organizer for a new event called Beta Bus, which is a WTFNB Midwest women's climbing event. So definitely check that out. And I am lucky enough to be chatting with Meagan Martin tonight. And I was lucky enough to meet her in person back in 2015 when ABS Nationals was here in Madison at the Monona Terrace. And I'm sure she remembers meeting me very well. It was a big day for her. But it's definitely my privilege to be chatting again with you tonight. So thank you so much for being here, Meagan, and definitely looking forward to our conversation. I first remember seeing you in American Ninja Warrior. That's how I was first kind of introduced to you, and seeing you not only get up the warp wall, but be the first woman to stick that spider wall where you had to kind of compress against. And one thing that struck me is you always just looked like you were having such a great time, no matter what was going on. I'm curious, just with women really making their comeuppance at that time in American Ninja Warrior, how was that energy? How were you feeling on those times where you were really breaking those records?
So first of all, thank you for having me. It's so lovely to see you again. It's interesting because there's kind of two different answers for that. For the warped wall and completing the qualifying course, I didn't really know what was going on at that point. Like I didn't know that it was a big deal that I had gotten up the wall. I didn't know women hadn't done it before because I had watched the show intermittently. I hadn't, been watching it all the time, so I didn't know exactly what was at stake at the time. But then going into Vegas and going into knowing that no woman had ever done the jumping spider, that was something that was on my mind. And I'm happy that I was able to not overthink the situation and let my nerves get to me. I just kind of went after it and attacked it. And I almost fell, honestly. Like I caught it barely and like fell forward and saved it somehow. And it just kind of worked out. But it was definitely a cool feeling and a great experience to break down some of those barriers on the course. And, I think it's kind of an addictive feeling too, because I want to continue to do that. And just in life in general, just never being limited. I think that that's really, important and special.
I can definitely see where a lot of that can go from Ninja Warrior to climbing just to life in general. What made you decide to go for Ninja Warrior?
So it was kind of random a little bit for me. So I had just moved to Boulder. I think I'd been in Boulder for about a year or like almost a year at that time. And I watched the original version of the show that used to be on like a game show channel. I can't even remember the name of the station, but it's the Sasuke edition of Ninja Warrior. And then, like I said before, I had kind of watched a few episodes here and there of American Ninja Warrior. And an email started circulating through the climbing community asking from the producers, wondering if more women wanted to try the show because they were looking for more women because women hadn't, broken some of those barriers yet. And they thought, oh, like rock climbers, they might be a good fit for the show. And so I saw the email and I knew a few people in the Boulder, Fort Collins area who had been on the show, and they were like, yeah, you should send in a video. It'll be fun, like blah, blah, blah. And I was like, cool, yeah, seems like a cool idea, but I don't know, like, I don't want to hurt myself. Like, I'm climbing is my career. It seems kind of risky. I don't know. So I made a video. They gave me a call. And then I literally got to that Denver qualifier, and I remember getting there and it was midnight and people had like crash pads to sleep on and like warm clothes. And I was like, wait, are we gonna be here for a long time? And they were like, yeah, we're here all night. Like if you qualify, you have to stay here till the end. I was like, wait, what? I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for this. Like this seems like maybe too much. I don't know. But luckily I stayed and it all worked out. But I definitely was hesitant at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So what kind of pushed you over the edge to stay? Because I could see being like, gosh, I'm not prepared. I didn't bring a hoodie with me. What am I going to do all night?
Totally. Yeah, in addition to that, it was actually freezing too. And I almost didn't even get to go. I went around like 5 a.m. in the morning and the steps had frozen right before, and they had to like blow torch them down in order to get them dry to run. And for me, I think the reason I decided to stay was not only that was I kind of excited and intrigued by the idea, but also I was there with like Noah Kaufman, Brian Arnold, Ian Dory, and like I'd gotten pretty close to them, even though I at that point only trained with them like a couple times. But they made me feel like, no, you should stay. Like, don't go home. Like, what are you gonna do? It's midnight anyway. Like, go back to sleep. So, yeah, I just decided to stay and ended up being a really good decision.
Yeah, no kidding. And now you're being a mentor for the American Ninja Warrior Junior and commentating, and I know you've been a coach before as well at the ABC gym. How has like the climbing and Ninja Warrior translated? Has that been an easy transition then, or similar skills?
So with mentoring a Ninja Junior, it actually was pretty cool that some of the kids that they got on the show were climbers. So some of these kids I actually already had relationships with, which was really cool. And I do think both climbing and Ninja Warrior have some similarities where it does translate really well. Obviously, like the upper body strength aspect. And then with climbing the way it is now, being much more focused on coordination and like kind of parkour in a lot of situations, that stuff translated pretty well. And honestly, like a couple years into doing Ninja Warrior and then having done so many World Cups and climbing, the coordination aspect was really helpful, that lower body part. And I think for me, it was obvious to see how my climbing background helped me in Ninja Warrior. But it's interesting that on the flip side, I think the stuff I learned in Ninja Warrior kind of helps me in those World Cup competitions, which is pretty cool.
Oh, super interesting. I'm sure like with just the crowd being there and the camaraderie that you have, I've definitely noticed camaraderie seems to be similar at Ninja Warrior as it is in climbing in general, kind of making fast friends. And even though you're kind of competing against each other, you're still cheering each other on. What's kind of the atmosphere like when you're cheering people on, but also when you're up there performing, basically, going at it, going at the course?
Yeah, it's something that they touch on a lot on Ninja Warrior is that aspect of community and the support. And I always bring it back to climbing. I'm like, well, this isn't actually the first sport where I felt that, because the climbing community is so supportive in that way, and we're always trying to help each other. So it's definitely refreshing to move into Ninja Warrior and see that it is a similar thing. We kind of do the same thing when we're looking at the course, because what they do is they have the ATS crew does a demonstration. And so we all just sit there and watch them do each obstacle. And then at that time, we're all kind of assessing how we're going to approach the obstacle, and then conversing later with each other and figuring out what's the best beta. I mean, I always try, especially when we start running, I try to look for people that are my size that are going, so I can kind of picture, like, sometimes people are like, oh, I want to watch a girl or I want to watch a boy, but I'm like, wait, I just want to watch someone that's closer to my size so I can just see exactly how this might feel for me. Because I remember that was something the first year that I didn't notice. The fifth obstacle on my first course was the double steps. And I remember getting to the transfer at the top, and all the guys, or not all of the guys, but a lot of the people who had been going were taller, and they were like here when they transferred. And then I got there and I was like fully spread out, and it was fine, but I remember being a little bit shocked. So after that, I started trying to like make sure I got my beta from people that were similar heights as me.
Yeah, I
Which
think
there
we're
aren't a lot.
similar. I think we're similar heights too. I'm always after the short person beta.
Yeah, I'm
when
like, give me
climbing,
that
like,
shorty data.
yeah, the advice, just reach for it, just stand up. No, that doesn't work. Has the course changed at all now that more women are getting involved? Like, have they sort of understood that not everyone's built the same, and they, one thing I like about Ninja Warrior is that they don't have a different course for women than they do for men. But then again, if you have a 6'5", wingspan, it's a lot different than someone with a 5-foot wingspan.
Totally. And I think the goal is generally that the obstacles even themselves out, kind of the same way in, a round of boulders. Yeah, maybe one might be a little reachy, but then maybe they'll even it out and make it better for short people. You kind of see that because you can't really please everyone at the end of the day. So it's more about how can we make this the most fair for everyone? And I think that there are aspects of that in the course. Some changes have done. I mean, I don't know if these changes are 100%. This is just from what I've experienced. So that first season that I did the jumping spider, it felt far and it felt very wide. And then after that, it did not feel as far and wide anymore. I think there was an adjustment there, but I can't be sure because I just don't have those answers. But I think there has been a little bit of a shift here and there. But then they've also changed things. Like the warped wall used to be 14 feet. Now it's 14 and a half feet. And then they have the mega wall. So I think they're always just trying to be as fair as possible. But like I said, I think it's hard because life's not fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just not.
They don't just want to have people failing on the same obstacle over and over again. And nor do you want someone constantly getting through it and it's almost too easy. So those changes can definitely be necessary. I have always wondered as well, this is kind of a side question, my own personal question, but the hosts, Akbar and Matt, are they really as enthusiastic and fun as they seem on the show? Like, they just have endless enthusiasm for every single aspect of the show.
Yeah, I feel like they are. I think they're both hilarious, honestly. I've spent a lot of time with them over the years, just chatting, and they both have very big personalities, definitely different from each other. Matt's actually a comedian, so he usually has some sort of joke that he throws in a conversation, I feel like, just naturally because it's what he does. But they're both very energetic. They're very nice. Yeah, I feel like they're great, and I'm always very excited to see them. And it's cool because they're down to have fun too. Like Akbar did the Celebrity Ninja Warrior one year. He like trained for it and like was one of the celebrities and ran the course, which was really cool. And I remember one time we had wrapped in Vegas. So we usually shoot the All Stars and all those special shows that you see. We shoot those like right after Vegas. So you spend about 10 days in Vegas. And at the end, we were all walking out at sunrise because we film all night. And Matt walked over to a trampoline and like ran and jumped and went to do a front tuck into the water. And he did, but he then ended up like hyperextending his knee on the trampoline. We were like, oh no. But they definitely both are into it for sure. And it seems as though they want to be out there when they're talking. And I think that that's very authentic because I think that they do really just love it and they're really psyched on all of it. So
yeah.
Pretty cool.
And, I know like you are doing the commentating now. We were talking about that just casually a little bit earlier. And this is one of the questions that our Madison Women's Climbers group had was like, what's it like commentating and being part of that production? What are some of the challenges? What are the most fun parts? I'm sure you've got some good stories there.
So it's interesting because I've always wanted to commentate. I think it really started to build in me like a few years ago. And I would, if I didn't make a final, I'd be like, hey guys, can I get in the booth? I really want to commentate. And they'd be like, yeah, we'll see if we can get you in there. And I'd like be up there for a little bit and say a few things. And I really enjoyed it. I think the hardest thing for me was that at a certain point, I was going to have to make a decision. Do I compete in this competition? Do I compete in the USA climbing competitions and continue to do World Cups and all that? Or do I give that up to be in the booth and commentate? And that was hard for me because I love competitions and I love being able to compete internationally. And it wasn't until 2018 that I really was able to make that decision. I think with a little divine intervention, because I had this hamstring injury that just would not heal, and it started making me think a little more about my career and what I was doing, and if I could continue doing these competitions all the time. And I was struggling to heal, and at like it was right before New Year's of 2018, or it was going to be 2019, so December of 2018, they sent out that casting for a color commentator, and all the changes in USA Climbing were happening at that time. I didn't know they were partnering with ESPN, but I was like, okay, this is okay. I'm gonna do this. And I was with my friends in New Orleans actually to celebrate New Year's. And I sat there on the computer all day, like setting up my application and making oh my gosh, I feel so dumb. What is that thing called? Resume, thank you. And so the reason I say that, I've never made a resume in my life because I'm an athlete. I don't need a resume, right? Like I've never actually made one. So I had to like go online and find a template and make a resume. I know now I feel like an idiot, but luckily I had already done so much on camera stuff and I had all these clips and stuff, and I just added that all into my resume. And in my mind, I was like, oh my gosh, like I hope I get this job because I feel like this is what I can do. And I love rock climbing competitions. I have been competing in them for so long, and I know all the athletes and I know their climbing styles. Like this just seems so perfect. So it was exciting to send in that application, but then I was immediately nervous. I was like, oh my gosh, if they don't pick me, I'm going to be so sad.
We all feel that way when we apply for jobs. Don't worry, it's a normal feeling. So when you decided to make that shift, I mean, that was going to be a pretty big risk for you. Like, you know, if you didn't get it and had to try to continue your climbing career, starting to feel these injuries, or if you do get it, do you leave the climbing behind? So like, how do you go about making those types of decisions, whether a risk is worth it with your career, but also, in climbing, like, how do you know when a climb is worth the risk of potential injury and whatnot?
Yeah, I think it's kind of tricky, and it's kind of unique to certain situations, I would say. I think when you're younger, it's easier to make decisions without thinking 10 steps ahead. For example, I stopped climbing for like 7 years, and I was graduating from college, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I'm just going to be a professional climber when I graduate college. I haven't, done a comp in almost a decade, but it's fine. Like I'm going to make it work. And in my 30s now, I'm like, wow, that was a really risky move there. But I think it's beautiful that it worked out and that I had that much confidence to pursue climbing in that way. And whenever I approach decisions now as I'm getting older, I think back about those other moments where I did take risks and they worked out, because I think at the end of the day, I think it's important to take risks towards things you want to happen, because otherwise, how are they going to happen? And then in regards to climbing and risks in terms of safety and whatnot, I think that that's really important too. I think one of the most important things to think about when you go, especially from inside to outside, is just what exactly is happening. I think it's so easy. We all get used to throwing ourselves around in the gym, bouldering and like falling on pads, whatever. And we don't really think about the fact that there is risk involved. And I think that you need to acknowledge it and then know that your ability will keep you safe. And obviously, like, accidents can happen too. But I think that as long as you're taking the steps to make sure you have good padding, good spotters, and you feel comfortable doing like a high ball or something, I've definitely gotten on things and been like, you know what, I don't think I feel comfortable doing this. Like, this is just not for me. And then you move on to something else. And I think that's fine too. I think you have to just listen to what your gut's telling you, because if you are second guessing yourself so much, that's not safe, right? So you need to be confident in what you're doing. And just remember that, climbing can be, oh, my cat's coming in. Climbing can be a dangerous, dangerous sport.
You knew he was going to come in.
Yeah, this is Bandit.
Bandit. All right.
But
Bandit.
yeah.
Co-host.
Yeah.
I know for me, like when I'm climbing, I never know the difference between this is dangerous or uncomfortable versus I should probably be pushing myself more. And like, how do you find kind of do you take advice from others? Do you flail around for a certain number of times before you walk away? What's kind of your thought process there between pushing yourself more to try harder things and maybe pulling it back because it could be dangerous?
Yeah, I think it's important with people that you're with to voice how you're feeling and see if they can help you in any way feel differently about the situation. And then I also think that testing things out is helpful too. With climbing, there's ways in which you can go for things a little less than all the way, right? In terms of moves and whatnot. So you can kind of test out like where you're going to land. Do you feel comfortable with that? I mean, I think, I would say most climbers have been in situations where you cannot fall in that situation. And that's something that you also have to learn to be okay with if you're going to do things that are maybe taller or in reference to bouldering mostly. And sometimes you are okay to do that, and other times you might not be, and it could change day to day. And I'm just saying that in experience from some of the taller climbs that I've done. You kind of have to know that you are going to the top, right? But there's lots of things where that isn't the case. And so you have lots of options. So if that's not for you, you don't have to do that. But I think in terms of movements and stuff or weird falls, like you can pad things certain ways. And I think it's good to just test them out. I mean, that even happens in the gym sometimes. I've flown off things before and been like, woo, I could have like landed on my head. That's a little scary. And so when I approach it the next time, I'm like, all right, I'm going to make sure my body's falling in a certain direction so I don't do that. And yeah, I think it's just about kind of adjustments for the most part.
I think too, like, is it worth it? Like for me, it's always like, is it worth me wrenching my shoulder to keep trying this dyno, or is dyno just not for me? And so it's kind of deciding, if you get injured, is this, this move worth it?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that everything comes down to, is it worth it, right? You kind of have to weigh the pros and cons in most situations. For example, me choosing to commentate, to me, it was worth it, especially because climbing's awesome and has multiple competitions that aren't USA climbing competitions. So I can have the best of both worlds. I can still compete in other comps and then go to the USA climbing competitions and watch everyone else climb and talk about it.
Yeah. We just got a question come in from Andy Summers, who I actually know. So hi, Andy. What is your most memorable moment from a comp, either as a competitor or something that happened while commentating?
Oof. So immediately I was going to talk about something about me in a competition, but now that you brought in the commentating aspect, there was something special about being at Pan Am's and being able to announce that Alana Yip and Colin Duffy qualified for the Olympics. I cried. I thought it was such an amazing moment to be a part of, because yes, we've had there have been other athletes that have qualified, but I hadn't been at any of the competitions working and calling that. So that, to me, that weekend in LA was amazing. It was just so cool to see everything that the two of them had worked for happen. And it was tense. It was scary. It's weird watching other people climb. And I started experiencing this as a coach I feel like I always get more nervous watching other people climb. It's a crazy thing. You think when you're out there climbing, you might be the most nervous, but there is something about watching other people that I just
palms.
like can't. Yeah, sweaty palms. My heart's racing. I can't breathe sometimes. If you ever see me commentating live, I like lean weird ways sometimes because I'm trying to get people to like do things, like kind of trying to send them, not actually send them messages, but like, you know, when you're bowling and you like lean
right,
that kind of thing. It's just hard not to, because you get so invested in every single person because you want every single person to be able to do their best. So yeah, I would definitely say that's got to be the most memorable moment, watching those two qualify for the Olympics and being able to say that they did.
Yeah. So another friend of mine has posted a question from Elena. As a commentator, what have been the most challenging climbing related concepts for you to explain to your audience?
So I think that a lot of the climbing concepts are actually pretty easy to explain, which is nice. I think the most difficult times kind of revolve around certain movements. It's great if someone does the movement and we have a slow-mo and we can pan back to it. And like, I remember Ashima did a barn door and we had like a perfect example of that. But some of the jargon, if you don't have that example, I think it's kind of hard to get the point across, which the production crew is amazing. So we end up getting a lot of those examples. I remember I had a really hard time trying to explain a Gaston, like that kind of hold to some, like on the live stream. I was like, wait, this isn't really, I don't even know, because you're grabbing a hold kind of the wrong orientation. Like, how do you explain that? But otherwise, I think it's been pretty easy. I think the rules make a lot of sense. And I think that no matter what, people are going to be mesmerized by climbing because it's such a unique sport and what people are doing is so different. And it's a crazy feat of strength and technique. So I think that it's not been so difficult. And I also think that having my co-commentator be someone who isn't a climber is really helpful, because then we kind of go back and forth and he asks me questions and it makes it really easy for me to explain what someone who doesn't really know anything about climbing would be wondering. So it's been a pretty easy thing to handle.
Yeah, sometimes you need to be reminded that not everybody understands what that jargon is, so that you can be more inclusive. So people who maybe are thinking about getting into it can be more understanding of that. I know like so much in climbing is kind of going back to sort of that risk and sort of failure area. When you are climbing, a lot of times I personally too, I think a lot of other people will concern themselves with how much we failed, failed on a move or on a send, whatever it might be. But failure is also a huge part of climbing because you're not going to send everything all the time. And would climbing be that fun if you didn't have to work at it? So like, how do you, in what ways do you use any sort of, failure to improve and move forward? And how do you keep up that motivation to keep going? Like when you're projecting something, to keep working at it, even though you might still be missing the same move over and over again.
Yeah, I would say that failure is one of the biggest parts of climbing. We spend most of our time failing. So we kind of have to learn quickly that it's part of the process. I always like to say that if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. Because like you said, I think if everything was easy, it wouldn't be as fun. It'd be kind of boring. And we'd be like, okay, cool. What else am I going to do now? For me with failure, I feel like it's helped me so much. I think that it's honestly the easiest way to pinpoint how we can be better. Like when people ask, oh, I've had a plateau, like I don't know how to make my climbing better or get stronger or whatnot. I mean, the easiest thing to do is pinpoint your weakness, right? Or weaknesses, and start there. And it's a great place to, it makes it just so easy to start and like start progressing. And I think that failure can be frustrating, and I think it's okay to accept that it's frustrating. We all have times where we might, be over trying a move over and over and over again. And then it's funny because after you freak out about that, maybe you do the move, maybe you don't, but I feel like 9 out of 10 times you do the move. But I think that it is just part of the process. And I think it's a good way to look at life too, because it's not always going to be easy. We're going to fail. And all we can do is learn from the failure. And the better you get at learning from failure, the more successful you're going to be. I honestly, especially in the past couple of years, since I had been competing so much, I hadn't spent a lot of time like projecting outside. And so it's been kind of nice to get back into that and know what it feels like to fail over and over and over again and get so close and then still fail or then split your tip or whatever's going on, right? And it's frustrating, but it's also so amazing when you do get through it, that feeling. And I think that's why people like climbing, right? I think we like the challenge of not being able to do something. I mean, how cool is it when you get on a problem or a route and like moves that you couldn't do at all at the beginning, like weeks later, you're doing them every time and you're just like falling at the end. It's so cool. It makes you feel like anything's possible. And I think it is, you know? And I think that we're lucky to get to experience that on a daily basis. So we should use it to our advantage.
Yeah, there's never a time where I don't reach the summit of a climb, no matter what type of climbing I'm doing, where I'm not sort of euphoric for making it over, even if I have to beach whale my way over the top out of a boulder.
Love a beach whale.
It's still an exciting moment for me. Yeah, that's great motivation to hear. And I think, you know, when we hear that, you know, people who make their life out of climbing are feeling some of those same things, you know, it sort of normalizes it all for the rest of us too.
I mean, we might even be feeling it more because there's that added pressure of thinking that you're expected to do things, right? Or like, if you don't perform, you know, what are you doing? And I've dealt with that a lot. I had like a breakdown the other day. I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing right now. This is ridiculous. And I think it's okay to have those moments. I think then you have to come back into perspective and realize like, no, this is just part of the process and it's tough, but that's what makes it so much better. Like someone said, nothing that comes easy is worth having or something like that. There's a quote. Probably just butchered it, but
not right.
But it's true. It's having to work hard and fail that makes things meaningful.
With kind of along those lines, has that gotten easier for you since you started climbing professionally and in competitions? Was it easier when you were younger and now it's the pressure is maybe higher now, or, you know, what direction has that needle moved?
I think it ebbs and flows. I think there have been times where, I mean, when I was a kid, one of the reasons I stopped climbing was because it felt like too much pressure. I had been climbing and competing in professional competitions when I was like 12 and doing well. And then all of a sudden I felt all this pressure that I always needed to perform. And I honestly just couldn't handle it. In hindsight, I wish I never stopped climbing, but it was also a good learning experience for me. And then I started pole vaulting. So I had other things that happened. And I think we learn from every decision we make. But then I just had to learn it later that things are going to be hard. And sometimes pressure can feel like too much. And at the end of the day, a lot of the pressure you think you have is really just coming from you, because people actually don't expect you to be perfect, because we're not perfect. We're not robots. We can't just be like, okay, perform. Woohoo. So I think it's important to keep it all in perspective and just, it's really cool when people walk away from competitions and they don't focus on the results, but how they felt. And one person who's really good at that actually is Brooke Rabitou. Whenever we talk after a competition, it's never like, oh, this is what happened, this is what place I got, blah, blah, blah. It's like, oh, I felt really good today, or I didn't feel that great, or I didn't read things well, or I did read things well. It's all about like how you felt and how you approach the climbing, which I love to hear, rather than like, oh, I didn't make finals and like it was awful. It's like, no, like I had a good day. I didn't make finals, but like I felt good and I'm happy with that, because we can only be happy with how much we tried, and all you can do is try your best. And I think that's a great way to look at things. I think that is the only way to continue to put yourself in those situations and then, be more successful. Because I think the minute you let go of expectations is when you'll be the most successful.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think for climbing and for anything, there's a lot of young folks that are watching tonight too. And I think that's just good life advice for them to start kind of learning now. When you were, I know you're a very active athlete growing up. What kind of supports did you get? We have this question from Vera. Did you get growing up from maybe coaches or family or whatnot?
So both of my parents were gymnasts, and I actually started in gymnastics first. And my parents were always really supportive. My mom was a gymnastics coach. So usually people think that if your mom was a coach, it probably was like intense, but not at all. All she wanted was for us to put in the work and then do our best. And that's all you can do. So it was really nice to have that kind of support and never feel like I needed to walk away with a certain placement. And that carried through in everything I do. My parents still support me and come to competitions, and they're always on the sideline on Ninja Warrior. And it's been really nice to have their support in my career and my dreams and not feel like I needed to be doing anything else. They definitely respect the hard work that it takes to be an athlete, and I think that's really cool. I've also had some really good coaches in my life, mainly in pole vaulting. And then in climbing, I feel like I had a few coaches growing up, but it was a very different time of climbing. It's like the early 2000s. Things are way more organized these days, which is awesome. But working at ABC, the Rabbitoos became like a second family to me. And Robin has always been super helpful with my climbing. And I feel like she's been a great mentor in that way. And then another person, Chris Danielson, helped me a lot with my climbing as well. He's a route setter, and yeah, just like a few people. And I think it's great nowadays, like I said, how climbing has evolved so much, and you can have so much support from coaches and your family as well. It's definitely a lot different, which is awesome. Having seen the other side of it, when I joined a climbing team, I was like one of 6 kids. Like,
oh wow,
very unorganized.
So different now.
So different, and I love it. And I was one of 6 kids and one of 2 girls. And when I was coaching at ABC, we always had more girls on the team than boys. And I just think it's so wild how it's evolved so much. It's just awesome. All you kids are super lucky. I love it. Can't wait to see what you all do.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. It kind of going along the lines of being, as you started out, being one of the few girls and women in climbing. There's a lot more talk now about inclusion in climbing, both for women, for people of color. There's all sorts of different things going on. What sorts of best practices have you seen at gyms or in your experience that the environment and the climbing community can just be more inclusive? Unfortunately, we still hear stories about these, inclusivity issues that are happening out there. What types of things can gyms be doing or teams be doing to help cultivate more inclusion?
So back when I started climbing, it was way different. I remember actually noticing how different it was when I was coaching again, and like seeing how much more diverse climbing had gotten. I was like, wow, this is interesting. Like youth nationals, this is so cool. We've grown so much. But yeah, there's always room to do better. And I think that with teams specifically, I think it's good to have an open dialogue with people. If people are feeling a certain way, if they're feeling excluded, I think it's good to address those issues. I feel like that's the easiest way for the future, right? To address it, because kids are the future. And I think with the climbing gyms, I feel like I've seen so many different things, especially moving from Colorado to California. California is way more diverse. You have lots of different cultures, which is really cool. And I think that the collegiate realm of climbing has really opened up more people to find climbing in life if they wouldn't have through their family. I think we're all really lucky if we get to start climbing as kids, but most people, nowadays maybe more people do, but still you meet people who are like, oh, I didn't start climbing until my 20s or 30s or 40s. And I think having a collegiate presence has been really helpful in being more inclusive. it just gives you another area to find climbing. And climbing gyms in general have made climbing more accessible to everyone. And I think that that has been a big, or one of the reasons why we've shifted to becoming more diverse and inclusive. But yeah, I always think it comes down to like an open dialogue. If there's issues, I think people should address them and not be afraid to address them, because you know, people might not know if they said something offensive or if you're feeling a certain way. And I think that all you can do is voice your opinions about it. And I think it's easier to keep under control if it's a team, obviously, having adults and parents and then the kids. But yeah, open dialogue, important.
Yeah. I think it's always good to bring up things like that. And I like the open dialogue aspect. So changes can be made if needed. So, gosh, there's so much more to ask, but we do want to highlight some of the young folks on the call today. So we've got some questions from our youth climbing team. Yay! Our first person is going to be Marin. So we're going to bring her in and let her ask her question.
Awesome.
Everyone wave. Yay.
Hi. It's Marin?
Marin.
Marin. Okay. Hi, Marin.
I am a really big fan.
Oh.
And my question is, where is your favorite place to climb?
Outside, do you mean?
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being a big fan. You're so sweet. My favorite place to climb. I honestly, if we're talking bouldering, I would say Switzerland. I've only been there once, but I had an amazing time. It was so cool. And I didn't even get to go to all of the areas, so I definitely want to go back there. And then I sport climbed in South Africa at Waterfall Boven. And honestly, I had forgotten I loved sport climbing so much until that trip. So that's a big one on my list.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Marin. We have Elijah up next.
Where's Elijah?
Hi.
Hi, Elijah.
I was going to ask you, do you do any ninja competitions other than American Ninja Warrior?
So generally I don't, but I did do a NNL, I think, a couple years ago when I still lived in Colorado, because it was hosted at Ninja Intensity in Castle Rock. And it was, I mean, I had nothing going on that weekend and it wasn't that far. And I love all the people over there. So I ended up doing that. But that's the only thing, the only competition that I've done so far. But I mean, maybe in the future.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was fun. I had a blast.
Yeah, I do climbing and Ninja Warrior as well. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. That's awesome. What's the ninja gym in your area?
It's Orthodox Fitness. It's like a fitness center and also like a Ninja Warrior gym. It's kind of like a mix and it's really fun.
Awesome. That's cool.
No wonder you're always tearing it up at the climbing gym, Elijah. Always working on those hard problems. All right, so we've got Sam next.
Hi, my name is Sam. I'm 10 years old. Me and my family love watching American Ninja Warrior.
Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you for being an awesome Ninja Warrior.
Oh, no problem. Try my best.
My question is, if you had some athletic advice, if you could give some athletic advice to your younger self, what would that be?
I would have told my younger self to work on my footwork earlier in climbing. That is definitely what because I spent about 2 years as an adult working on that, and it finally got better. But it would have been nice to start that a little earlier.
Yeah, that's important.
It really is. Yeah, I thought you could just campus through everything. That's not how it works. Thanks for your question.
Thanks, Sam. A great piece of advice. I wish I also had, 10 or 11 years ago when I started climbing. So, so we do have another young person with a question that's from Chris, but I'm going to ask for them. Have you ever considered competing on Ultimate Beastmaster?
I Have not, only because technically I don't think I'm allowed to per the contract with American Ninja Warrior, because they're kind of similar shows. It is really cool though. I have watched it and it definitely looks very exciting and everything's so big. And it looks a little intimidating, honestly, but I would definitely love to. But I think there's some contractual issues that prevent me from doing that.
Maybe you can just run around and play on it or something. And
Yeah, I do know a few people who tested it. So maybe that could be something in the future.
yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Chris had another question. Chris loves climbing, but can sometimes be a little bit afraid of heights. So how do you deal with fear and mental roadblocks that might come up when you're climbing or performing?
Yeah, so yeah, fear can be a little tricky. For me, if I know that, I mean, it's obviously if you're in danger, it's one thing, but if you're just having like a fear of something where you're still safe, for me, I just try to speak positive things to myself. I'm a huge believer in positive talk. So like, you're okay, this is fun, I'm having a great time. I do this actually. Multi-pitch climbing to me is terrifying. So when I'm up there, I'm usually like, okay, your knock's good, you're good, everything's fine, you're belaying, it's all good. I just try to be as positive and calm myself down as much as I can. I also do this in terms of being nervous sometimes. Like before I step up onto that stage for Ninja Warrior, I'm so nervous in the back, like I'm about to cry. No joke. Like I feel like tears are like building up into my ducts because I'm so scared. And so when I'm back there right before I step up onto that stage, I say, this is fun. You're good at this. You're going to have a blast. You get to swing. You're going to be okay. It's not the end of the world. And that totally helps. The more you like bring it back to perspective, I think especially remembering that nothing is the end of the world generally is really helpful, because I know, especially with competition, sometimes we can feel that way. Like, oh, if I don't do this one more move, or if I don't complete this obstacle, like, how do I get over this? But at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. But with the fear of heights specifically, yeah, just calm yourself down, deep breaths, really helpful. And yeah, as long as you're generally safe, I think you just gotta give yourself some positivity.
That's great. When I'm multi-pitching, I will sing, and I prefer to sing Hamilton music
Love
from the
that.
Hamilton show. So
That's
yes,
amazing.
yes. Or reminding myself that my personal devices could hold up a car if needed, and they're not going to break.
Yeah,
so I'm definitely
that's
with
awesome.
you. But
It
yeah,
gets scary up there when you're that high.
but again, man, when you get to that summit,
It's so awesome.
you forget all about it. So.
Yeah, the views. Yeah, do it for the views. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, that positive self-talk is huge. Like even if you're just doing a little boulder problem, like just not getting into that negative self-talk.
Yeah.
That leads to more failure, leads to more frustration, and kind of puts you back a little bit further just from everything else we were talking about today.
Yeah, and I think the negativity can make you more tense too, which makes you less likely to get through whatever you're trying to get through easier. You got to be as relaxed as possible. So
yeah. So we haven't had any other kids send Chip any messages or any questions. So I just want to see if anybody else had a question out there. You can raise your hand if you do, and you can unmute if you have a question. Does anybody have one?
The power to unmute.
Ooh, yeah, it's a big responsibility. With
great power comes great responsibility.
And great minds
Yes.
think alike. Yes. I don't see any hands going up, so I think, we have, looks like Sam raised his hand. Okay, Sam, can you unmute and share your question?
What would you say is the most trickiest and scariest part about pole vaulting?
Oh, wow, that's a good one. It's generally not too scary. So for me, I think it's different for everybody, but for me, it was always really difficult, my timing when I would plant the pole into the box. I often planted early. And because of that, sometimes the boxes have little lips on them. And so I actually one time got the end of my pole stuck on that, and I like went up into it and then flew back onto the runway and like got a little concussion, which was a little scary. So like that moment for me was very scary. And I knew in that moment, like, I need to go again right now. Otherwise, I'll never do this again. So I actually walked back and ran and jumped, and it was fine. And then I went to the training room, and they were like, "Oh, you have a concussion. Cool." But I think that section of jumping was always hard for me just because my timing was never perfect. It was hard to get it right for me. And then I have to say, actually, running into an object that doesn't move like full speed is a little scary. And I would generally every year go through like a month. It was kind of like clockwork. I'd have a month where I would just like run through like every practice. I would like run through. Maybe I'd jump like 1 or 2 times because in my mind I was like, this is weird. Running at something, a stationary object full speed is scary. And then I'd get out of it after a month of being terrified, luckily. But yeah, I think sometimes doing things that don't seem right for your, but like it just seems like against physics, even though pole vaulting is all physics and it makes a lot of sense actually. That was a little scary for me at times, but pole vaulting, haven't done it in years. It'd be fun too though. You get to fly. It's really nice.
Pole vaulting seems so scary. Like to force yourself to do that, climbing would be no big deal after flying over that bar.
Yeah, it's funny though because when it's right, when it works perfectly, and perfect is maybe not the best word because nothing's perfect, but when it works, that feeling is everything feels great. You like hit it, and then you fly through the air and you land on a big cushiony mat. You just have to remember those good moments and not remember the bad ones.
Remember that positive self-talk. That mat is
Exactly.
there.
See, it all goes back to positive self-talk. I feel like everyone could accomplish anything as long as they're just positive.
Absolutely. So as we sort of start to wrap up for the night, I can't believe this hour has gone by already. I feel like we could talk even longer. What are your next things? What are you going to do right after this COVID stuff ends, and kind of what's next for you in your career?
Well, so I'm really hoping that we get to hold Sport and Speed Nationals because I would love to be commentating. Hoping that all of those competitions and some of the IFSC ones start again. Yeah, originally I was thinking of going back to Colorado to do a little climbing trip. So that would be nice if that could still happen. But definitely just being able to just go out and do whatever you want would be nice again. I don't know if anyone else feels that way, but it's kind of getting a little difficult to deal with all these restrictions all the time. But I understand we got to be doing this. But yeah, just a little bit of freedom would be nice. Mm-hmm. Go climb wherever you want, whenever you want.
Yeah. What about your career? Continue commentating?
Yeah, definitely continue commentating. I'm hoping to get the Olympic job. I've been working on that all year, and then they were like, "We're postponing the Olympics," so who knows?
Can we vote you in? Will they listen to us?
I wish that would be amazing. See, write them a letter. Yeah, that is my goal, and it's definitely still my goal. Yeah, that and just getting outside more. I model too, so hopefully get more of those jobs in the future. Yeah, some competitions. My plan is just like 5 competitions a year that I compete in. So hopefully the ones I was gonna do are able to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, all of that.
Yeah, it's a weird time.
I know.
What's the community saying about the Olympics being postponed? I know you're great friends with Brooke. How's she feeling with the change?
I think like for her, I think it was a weird time not knowing what was going to happen. I think now you can kind of breathe and be okay with being in quarantine and having not as many options to train because now it's a whole nother year away. I was definitely relieved for all of the athletes when they postponed it because I think it would have been stressful trying to figure out how you're going to stay in your tip-top shape in order to perform. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. I think it's scary to think about how it's all going to go because I mean, hopefully it happens in 2021. I mean, we don't know because it's a huge gathering, so who knows? But it would be a shame if people didn't get a chance to compete.
Yeah.
like such a big deal. And especially for climbing, it's a huge deal. I've like been so excited about this for a while now. I'm sure everyone has. So
Yeah.
I can
Well,
only hope for the best.
to focus on positive self-talk, we will think good thoughts and we'll be ready when the time comes to be climbing again. So for those of you who can't really see our whole screen right now, Meagan and I actually are joined by several folks from the Boulders climbing team. And they've been asking questions, but there's even a host of them behind us. So to say thank you and to say hello and goodbye and everything, we're all gonna unmute and give a big cheer. So kids, if you can unmute, give a wave, give a thanks, give a cheer.
Hi.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
I hope you're all doing well in this weird time and staying psyched on climbing because it's the best sport ever.
Yes, I'm sure they're anxious to get back into the gym and get back into seeing each other. I recognize a lot of faces from when I'm in the gym and they're all training around and getting things done. Elijah has a quick question as we
Yeah.
this up. Yeah, go ahead.
So with applying to like auditioning to get on Ninja Warrior, how many tries did it take you to get on? Did you get on like your first try, like asking to get on, or what?
Yeah, I did. It was the first try. But I mean, again, when I applied, it was a little different because it was 2014 and I had gotten that email asking for more women to apply. So it wasn't too, I mean, I think it was still competitive to get on the show, but it wasn't as, right now it's crazy. I mean, they get so many submissions now. It's insane. So yeah, how old are you?
I'm 14.
Okay, cool. So
I do climbing.
You're thinking
and Ninja Warrior.
Sorry?
I do climbing and Ninja Warrior, and I find them both very fun. But which one is your favorite out of the two?
I think climbing will always be my favorite. I feel like climbing keeps us challenged in a way that it's like so addicting, and I love the idea of having to like solve puzzles in order to get through a boulder or a route. It's just more cerebral in my opinion. Yeah, and then having outside, inside, there's just so much of it. It's definitely my favorite. I love it.
Yeah, it's timeless too.
Yeah.
So thanks kids for joining on here and for submitting your questions as well. It was great to hear from all of you. And we'll just sort of wrap up, and it was such an honor for me to be able to do this. Probably the easiest interview I've ever done, and I think it was super fun. So
I had a blast.
And I'll extend that invite from the Madison Women Climbers again to join us anytime at the lake. We'd love to take you out there, and you're welcome anytime back here in Wisconsin. So again, thank you so much, Meagan, and thank you to Boulders for giving me the opportunity to guest host tonight. We do have, Boulders does have more of these sessions. And so definitely stay tuned for those on Thursday nights and watch our social media so you can see who's coming up next. And thanks again. And thanks everyone for being here. And thank you, Meagan.
Thank you all so much. So happy to be here. Stay safe, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.